Tony D and Little Joan with a screenwriter's take on My Son Hunter from Breitbart Movies. Davi directs and Laurence Fox stars. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Check out my books. The links are in the description. You have been checking out my books. Thank you from the bottom of my black heart. All right, so I do these analysis of movies and whatnot. I kind of like to go where the nexus of politics and movies intersect, and I had to watch this movie. I don't watch a lot of movies these days, as many of you know. I don't have time. I'm too busy writing books and trying to survive in this crazy world. But I did pay for the download of My Son Hunter, and it's a pretty good movie. It's pretty good. Now, it's not a traditional movie in the narrative sense. It's a political satire. And actually, it's more of a, it's not really satire so much as it's a political narrative, really, because they're not really exaggerating too much. If anything, they undersold parts of it, I think. But it's well directed. I think Davi did a good job directing it. It's pretty engaging. I think Laurence Fox is spot on. Very engaging as Hunter. Very troubled. He's just the whole movie. He's a mess. He's just an absolute mess from beginning to end. So as always, I'll give you my non-spoiler review, and then give you my spoiler reviews, and we'll drill down into it. So overall, I think the movie's good. The first two acts move very quickly. It's about 95 minutes, and the last act is a little slower. It's different from the movie, from the first two acts. The first two acts are just boom, 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 driving with all this info and stuff, and it's kind of information driven. Look, I'm totally biased in this review. Cards on the table. I already knew a lot of this information. I wanted to see this movie made or something like it. So it's not so much a satire as kind of a Hunter Biden's laptop for dummies, really. A presentation that sort of maps out all the highlights of the laptop, and it's bad. It's really bad, and I've drilled down into it a fair bit. I've watched tons of videos about it. I've looked at you could look at the laptop online. Somebody has like a copy of it, or pieces of it, so you can see emails and you can see videos. It's pretty nuts. It really is pretty nuts. I mean, well, I don't want to go too much into the laptop. It's going to be very hard for me to do this review without swerving into politics, but I'll do my best. Now, from a movie standpoint, those first two acts, a lot of it's just Laurence Fox completely out of control with drugs and sex and money, and he's just stealing with both hands, and he's very much as I imagine Hunter. He was really messed up, and I agree with this. I think it was probably the accident with his biological mother, who died in a car crash with his sister, that really messed him up. He was very young at the time. He survived, and on top of that, he was kind of like the also ran in the family. His brother Bo was the golden child, right? And he's dead. He died of a brain tumor, and they were in this best friends. I'm not sure how true that is. I suspect it was, but I also suspect deep down Hunter probably was jealous of his brother a bit, because he probably got all the attention and praise, and he considered himself the F up, and that spiraled into probably the drugs and the whoremongering and everything else. So you gotta, on some level, feel bad for the guy, but I think, and I said this many times, I think he hates himself, and they portray that very well, especially Laurence Fox. I mean, I think most addicts kind of hate themselves. They're slowly trying to kill themselves. And there's not much here that I think they get wrong. Little details like I think their take on why Hunter decided to do the paintings probably is a little generous, but it is what it is. I mean, who knows what the true. I mean, it could be spot on for all I know. I'm just speculating. Um, the guy who plays Biden is good. So the first act, without going too much into it, the movie is framed through the eyes of a Biden supporter who's a liberal, and she goes to protest, and but she also works as an escort to get herself through college, right? So, yeah, yeah, it's like all the excesses of the left rolled into one, and then she is deep down trying to be a good person, so she's trying to help Hunter, but Hunter is so steeped in corruption. Like, it's an impossible task, really. It's really an impossible task. And that's what the main presentation is. It's like, look at this guy. He's so deep in it. She's trying to help him, but there is no helping him. What would help is for them to be arrested at this point. So, in terms of entertainment, I think the first two acts are super entertaining. The last act is more of it's kind of a downer, really. It's kind of a downer, but then it sort of ends on a positive note, but with a fictional character and not so much Hunter, because what can they do? Hunter went on to be the president's son, and Biden won the election, the election where there's absolutely no malfeasance. And that's history, right? So the fictional ending works. I'm not sure how there's any other way to end it until Biden's term is up. So I also think they gave Biden a little bit too much credit. I think the portrayal of him is a little too together. I expected him to be like way more of a disheveled mess than he was, but one could argue that that's probably been made worse by the fact that he's got all the pressures of being president. I don't know. But it's also not a super high budget movie, so having a character to play Jill and more Secret Service and go into the White House, that would all cost more money. But I think the movie, it's really about Hunter and his just deep seated hatred of himself, his depravity, and I think that is portrayed pretty well, while at the same time giving you a rundown of all the incredible crimes that were connected to his laptop. So that concludes my non-spoiler review. So if you want to see it, it's on the Breitbart website. You have to send them like an email, and then you pay them $22 and you can watch it. Which isn't a bad price, I guess, if you got a small group of people, but yeah, for one person it's a little steep for a ticket, but I didn't feel like I wasted my money. All right, so that concludes the non-spoiler review. Let's drill down in it. Okay, so Davi's direction, I think, is again really good. There's this great shot of tracking shot following Hunter going into a nightclub that kind of is towards the opening of the movie. It's really good. The girl. It starts out with the girl at basically an Antifa protest, probably in LA, and already she's just like beholden to her side, as her girlfriend says, "Oh, don't post that video, it'll make our side look bad," and she's just like, "Oh, but it's a cool video, and it was what happened," and she's just like, "Yeah, they're always like, it shows how these people are operating in terms of no, we have to make everything about the power grab. Everything's about the power grab," and and then people are always talking to the camera in the movie. So it's not like your traditional narrative. It's more of like, like Gina Carano's character is a Secret Service agent, but her character really feels more like one of the many hosts of this information, where she talks to she spends most of her lines are talking to the camera. Then you get Hunter, and he's just awash in decadence, right? He's doing cocaine and he's drinking and he's banging girls left and right. So he hooks up with her, but really she's an escort. And then, before she even makes the offer to help him, she just, you just see how steep the corruption goes, right? And Hunter's just a mess. And Laurence Fox, I think, does a really good job of playing that. Just constantly doing coke and drinking booze. There's a great moment where he's walking through a party and they cut to a cartoon version of Hunter's heart, like running a mile a minute, and then he does some crack to calm himself down. So, then in the second act, it's about him and the girl, and she's trying to help him. She basically says, "Oh, my dad's a lawyer. I could help you if you have to talk to people, so you don't say stupid things." And so she asks him basically to tell her about all his crimes, and he just opens up, which again, it's just a device so they could rattle off all the many, many crimes that are on the laptop. And right before that, she talks to one of Hunter's bodyguards or Secret Service guys, and he basically shows the escort girl, the reason you didn't hear about any of this stuff and the laptop is you're on the wrong news site. And he directs her to Fox, which I wouldn't have done that, but I understand why Breitbart does it. It's kind of a simplistic way to show the two worlds. Well, here's the narrative of most of the mainstream media, 90%. Here's the narrative of Fox. I wouldn't have put I think it's given Fox a little too much credit because they're so neocon, but I understand why he did it. I mean, it's what people who need to see the movie need to know, right? As opposed to people who need to see the movie, they only know Fox. They don't really know OAN or any Newsmax or any of the, and those are pretty big by comparison to some of these more obscure, YouTubers and whatnot. Like, I don't think they're going to know them. I don't think they're really going to know the millennial. They might, doubtful. So I kind of can forgive it. So in the second act, like, Hunter's just rattling off the crimes, and you see recreations of various Biden missteps, including the famous talk where he brags about blackmailing Ukraine. And that's done pretty well. And then the great thing about that, of course, is at the end credits, it's a montage of all the media shilling for Biden and covering up the laptop. And then you get to see that clip that they recreated in the movie. And it's, pretty spot on. Then in the third act, it's kind of about the girl getting red-pilled and deciding, I've got this evidence about the laptop and Hunter Biden, and I'm going to go to the Washington Post, of all places. And at first I was like, Washington Post? Wait a minute. And then, of course, the reporter's like, this is Russian disinformation. And you're like, okay, right? Which was a great sort of takeaway, a great way to end that. And, there is, and then they show you the imaginary, Hunter being arrested, which, of course, didn't happen and probably will never happen. And talks about how that's a fantasy, and that's a bit depressing. But then they try to end on a high note with her reconnecting with her father. So from, an emotional standpoint, from a story standpoint, that was a good way to end it. I'm not sure how else you could end that story. I was watching it thinking about my book that I co-wrote with Christian Baranek, Wokistan, a novel, and it's got a lot of similarities in that moment happens in our book, where it's like people think, I'll go to the press and they'll tout it because they're for the people, and they'll talk about this horrible, injustice, and then they just make everything worse, right? So I think it's a great moment in the film, but I think there could have been more of that. But that would make it more of a satire, and I don't really see it as a satire. I see it as, I guess you'd call it a political drama, and it is funny to watch Laurence Fox run around and act like a maniac, but, Hunter kind of is a maniac, in my view. Um, this is a great scene where Hunter and Joe talk about their various crimes. Um, I'm not sure if Laurence is very short or if the actor playing Joe Biden is very tall, or if they did that because is Joe Biden that tall? He seems pretty tall. Maybe. Oh, there was also another scene early in the movie where Joe Biden's swimming, which is apparently a thing he does a lot of. The rumor I heard was that Biden likes to swim naked. Now, old school guys tend to do that, but then the story was he did that despite the fact some of the times he'd be guarded by a female agent and he wouldn't cover up. So I was kind of expecting that, but they didn't do that. He had a bathing suit on. I guess that would have been too much, but they do an awful lot of him sniffing hair, which is hilarious. And there's Gina Carano saying, and all three of them, I think, talk to the camera in this scene. So he looks really like Hunter in that shot, darkening his hair. The only thing I would say about the actor playing Joe is he seems a little bulkier than Joe is. Joe is like emaciated to me. I think if he dropped like 30 pounds, he'd be a lot closer. But other than that, he's pretty spot on. He doesn't really do the voice, but I don't think he needs to. So from a screenwriting perspective, it's interesting to see those first two acts because they're just gunning it. Man, they're just going run to one scandal after another. They're showing boobies and drugs and all that alcohol and craziness, and it just flies by the first two acts. And then it's only when the girl gets red pilled. There's this moment where Hunter asks her to marry him because he's so just lost and he just desperately trying to cling to anything, and then she leaves with a recording of him and all this stuff, which seems kind of unrealistic, but it's a fiction. It's just a framing mechanism. It's just a device used to show you, even if someone had this, scoop on the Bidens, that sure the reporters would be like, oh no, we got to fight fascism, kind of attitude, and that I think for that I think it works. I think it works. But I'm pretty biased towards this movie. I wanted this movie to be good. I liked it. I think it moves pretty good. It's 95 minutes, perfect amount of movie. I don't think you want a movie much longer than that, unless it's something epic, something grand, something huge. I don't see why a movie has to be. There's so many movies now. They're like 2.5 hours, 3 hours, and 10 minutes. Like, that's too long. With some exceptions, that's too long. Hamlet was over 3 hours by Kenneth Branagh, and it moves amazingly. But that's the exception, not the rule. This, I think it's perfect at 95 minutes, I think everything about it was solid. Really the stuff I'm just picking at. There were a few other things from the laptop. It gets mentioned, they don't really focus on it, but there's so much in there. Like one of the things, I was surprised they didn't add Joe Biden's brother. He figures fairly heavily in the laptop too. There's communications with him. Maybe they had to stay away from him because they're worried about, defamation maybe, because it's kind of hearsay about him. So maybe they just decided to stay away from that. I don't know. But, I think this, for someone who knows the information, it's a good movie. It's a fun time. You can laugh at it as much as you want to laugh at this stuff. And for someone who's never heard it, they may find it totally insane and unbelievable. But what else are you going to do? At least it's an entertaining way to deliver the message, And I don't think Robert Davi over dramatizes it too much, And he's smart to stick with characters who essentially are on the Biden side, but still are like, yeah, this is wrong. This is too much. These guys are corrupt. Please stop this. And they just don't. Biden is, I think he's a little too together, but he's pretty ruthless. Like, he desperately wants to be the president of the United States. This is his fourth shot at it. I think it's probably not true that he wants to be president. I think he kind of got pushed into it to protect Hunter partly, but I mean it's a perfectly valid take. I mean I may be wrong. Same thing with Hunter and the painting. I can't imagine deep down Hunter wanted to be a painter, but his father kept him in law or what. I mean I think he graduated from law school. I think that to me is a total scam. I think that Joe basically told him, no, 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 you're going to sit in this house and make paintings because this is the only thing you can do and not get us into more trouble. But who knows what their real relationship's like? But I thought the one in the movie seemed pretty realistic. And again, Hunter, beating himself up in the movie to me seems very realistic because he seems like that kind of guy. He's a drug addict, and he seems to hate himself. So, again, I think it's worth it. If you want to see it, it's on the Breitbart website, and from a screenwriting standpoint, what can you learn from this? Well, I think most of what drives this movie is just the information, really. And I think it's just Laurence Fox and Davi's direction that sprinkled in help you sort of, it's like wrapping a piece of cheese on a bitter pill. It like helps you enjoy it, as horrible as some of the crimes are. I mean, they even do the bit with they kind of do the bit with Parmesan cheese in the rug. It's a subtle reference too. It's not like, it's not like hitting you over the head with it. Also, too, that not only are there pictures of Hunter doing drugs, having sex. There's movies of him doing it. He had his own Pornhub channel. So, yeah, I mean, I think the movie does a pretty good job of encompassing a lot of information. So, check out My Son Hunter. It's at the Breitbart website. It's $21.99 to download, and I assume you can watch it whenever you want. Once you paid for it, I don't know. I already watched it, so I probably won't watch it again. But solid entry, guys. Nice going. And that's it for me, Tony D, and Little Joan. Check us out on Odysee, Bitchute, and Rumble for our more bass takes, because you're only getting 2 videos here. You gotta go to the other sites. All right, I'm gonna wrap it here, and we'll see you